You've been working on like race cars and like exotic cars for a while
But yeah,
now,
yeah.
right?
I mean, it's just kind of like what I've been doing. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of precision engineering shit. It's what I do. I've been doing it forever. I don't care if it's like mixing some records thing on recorded stuff on Pro Tools or engineering guitar tones or machining a special kind of 4140 steel to get threads on it or preparing for welding whatever, anything, just bring it on. The
That's
harder the
awesome, man.
better. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. So you've been playing guitar for a while now, since like being 13, right?
Yeah, that's about right. I think that's exactly right. 13, yeah. How'd you know
Yeah.
that?
I
Like,
got some Nardward stuff.
yeah, cool. I
Got the
mean,
Nardward connection.
yeah,
Um,
well, at least it's, somewhat true. I mean, I gotta have somebody update the Wikipedia thing. I mean, I don't even know what the hell's in there anymore, but you never know.
I never
Now
look at them.
there's other stuff available someplace.
Yeah, what made you want to like pursue guitar?
Um, I don't know. But I can say pretty much what kind of started it. I mean, when I was really little, it was the '60s, and my father had a bunch of phonograph stuff, hot audiophile stuff for us today, because all the really high end turntables and all that. That was the only way we could ever listen to 12-inch stuff. It's the only way we could really ever listen to music. But we also had a tape player, and my dad had a whole bunch of songs on his concertone tape player. And somehow I figured out how to put tapes on and listen to the Doors and listen to this music he was listening to, and then the Beatles came into the picture. I figured out how to use the record player, and it was. I mean, I think what happened is I got into music, and then I realized that the guitar was something that interested me as well. I mean, I was never attracted to drums or the violin or flutes or something. I mean, even though to some extent it's all musical and very related, but it was much more in the direction of I don't know. I mean, it's a very good question. I don't know what drew me exactly to the guitar. Maybe it was just because I was listening to the old rock and roll stuff. Like I mean, I remember the Jimi Hendrix record in 1970. The Band of Gypsies record came out, and I was just completely blown away by, like, how is that even possible? How does he make those sounds? And then it was guitar stuff, and right about the same time, the same thing happened with Made in Japan, from the classic Purple record. And Richie was playing somewhat more accessible kinds of musical stuff, like you could pick it up, like everybody knows how to play Smoke on the Water. But with Hendrix, there's a lot more about sonic madness with feedback and vibrato bars, and how he's like harnessing the technical abilities of the Stratocaster to, like, just make sounds that were just like otherworldly, literally like flying bombs, and
Insane.
no one had done anything. I mean, it was insane. It was interesting to me. I don't know. Good
Yeah.
question. I mean, again, it was never like I never had really any serious interest in the piano. It became really interesting later because I go, wow, this is the same notes we use on guitar. There's 12 notes, and there's all these octaves, and then you can use it too. But I never got into, like, actually, I can do the 1/5, what fifths, and I can bang around on a keyboard. It's not that hard to do, but it was never my thing to, like, get behind sitting there tickling the ivories, so to speak. I mean, I don't know. I just got into the
Yeah.
strings. I got into stringed instruments. And I still, I can play bass. And I mean, I don't know. You know what's a cool instrument? Is a harp.
Yeah, man.
You ever fuck around with a harp?
No, I can't even. That's so intimidating. I
Oh, it's
don't
not.
feel
It's like a piano.
really.
Yeah, because it's like
Oh, that
every
makes
note.
sense, I guess.
It's like a multi-octave stringed instrument, like a piano, and you can, like, pluck on it, and all the notes are there, and you got to tune them. And but they sound really heavy and brutal and big, and harps are amazing. I mean, I'd love to get one, mess around with it,
That'd be
put
so cool.
yeah, put pickups on it, hook it to a couple march stacks. I
Yeah.
mean, imagine that. I mean, it's like a piano, but you're like, wow. Now you
What
got me
band
thinking.
does that? like wheels
I
out
don't
an
even
electric
know.
harp?
I don't know. I mean, we got Apocalyptica with the cello stuff. We got
Not a harp
Jean-Luc
though.
Ponty. Yeah, Jean-Luc Ponty with his electric violins. You know, you got Derek Sherinian doing everything you can imagine on keyboards, but who does electric harp? No one. There we go. That's
Hey,
got to
hey,
be.
for the next record.
Yeah, hell yeah. We recorded a real double bass. That was cool, you know.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to playing guitar, how soon after learning to play, like, did you get exposed to metal?
Well, okay, so all the way back to the beginning again. So like it would have to be that it would have to be that Who Live at Leeds record. If you've never heard that, you got to listen to it. It's like punk
Amazing.
rock,
Yeah.
but before punk rock, I mean, you know, all that stuff, the aggression that Pete Townshend was doing, and how John Entwistle played bass and all that. That was like heavy metally, punky kind of like before punk and metal. You know, like
It's
Jesus. And then
heavy.
I got into Humble Pie. That was all heavy rock. You know, we were getting into the 70s. So, like, there was like, you know, and obviously we had like, of course, we had Black Sabbath and the Led Zeppelin stuff too. I was just trying to think what was right prior to those. So, yeah, I mean, The Who came out, I mean, right about the same time I got into Black Sabbath. There was also, you know, a little bit of Santana in there. That was like intense, sustaining, wild guitars. But Hendrix was like, that was just off the charts, you know. I mean, that was 60s. That was still late 60s. And, you know, I mean, and the Rolling Stones, you know, like Can't Get No Satisfaction. That's still kind of with distorted guitar. And it was kind of offensive and awesome, you know.
During the time. Yeah, totally, man.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking back when I was little, you know, like what the hell else was annoying that I used to like to listen to? I mean, I don't know. It was, I mean that kind of stuff comes to my. I mean, we listened to the radio back then. It's like the big thing was to have an FM radio. So like my parents had like this like little box on the side of their bed, and I could tune in the radio stations and jump around on the bed. So like, you know, then Led Zeppelin came out with the Immigrant Song, and I remember jumping up and down on the bed to that. You know,
Well, there
and
we go. Those were the early seeds, I guess.
oh yeah, hell yeah, that's where it all started. I mean, I was so little. And I, you know, I couldn't play. I didn't seriously start playing till later, you know. So I was into the music before then, you know. But this is all like super honest stuff. I mean, it's nothing like what's going on today. My God, it's like what
Oh
happened?
my.
Fuck, I can't
Yeah.
even. What has happened? I don't even know how to explain anything anymore. It just blows my mind. I mean, consider you really effectively brought me back to when I was little, before 10. You know, and that range. You know, in the 60s when I was little, in the 70s, right there and around the changeover, that was an amazing time. I mean, there
Yeah,
was like,
man. I bet. Like I was born in the late 90s and I still don't really have a grasp on music today. Like it is just insane what's happened,
yeah,
you
no, I
know?
hear you with the 90s, and this, I mean, it's honest and it's not uncommon for guys that are your age and my son's age, who's basically the same age as you know, to like, you know, reach back in history and find out when things started going the way they did. I mean, before my knowledge and recollection of you know, like understanding and where I started, you know, canvassing all the records and vinyl to try to figure out what I liked. You know, there was also lots of relevant shit like the Kings. There was, you know, even the early Beatles, you know, like when it was a super poppy sing-songy and all that. I mean, I was way into the White Album and all the heavier shit that came later. I mean, my parents were crazy. They bought all that stuff too. So I got into it. And it was like, wow, what is this? Revolution 9? It's just like, sounds like crowds of people, you know, in some riot situation. But
Yeah.
back to like the Kinks and before then, you know, early 60s, there was all sorts of relevant shit that I'd never. I mean, if you listen to the older guys, what they talk about, they they uh they talk about lots of relevant shit back then, you know, like with the Blues Breakers and Eric Clapton and all that. And, you know, those guys, and even Elvis Presley to a large extent, you know, they still had guitars. And Jimmy and, you know, Buddy Holly came out with his thing. That was the first attempt to play really cool melodic stuff that we still kind of play that same style a little bit today with a Stratocaster and, you know, and then, you know, surf music. I mean, there's a lot of intricate picking and stuff that goes on with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all relevant. It's seriously relevant. And then,
it is
and what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, Chuck Berry, of course. Chuck Berry was like super important. You know,
amazing.
but my dad wasn't really into Chuck Berry so much. He was like more into the Doors, and he listened to like other strange kinds of stuff like the Kingston Trio, and I learned about how to sing a little bit by listening to those guys. Like barbershop quartet stuff with guitars. But that's back to zero, man. I'm telling you, like
It's nothing wrong with that, man.
when I
Great
first learned
music.
how to put records onto the turntable and I started spinning the needle, like, oh shit, how does this work? Oh.
Were you saying you're saying you learned how to play like a reel to reel at an early age?
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
reel-to-reel
wow.
machine. I mean,
Damn.
back in the ancient days, there was like any kind of audiophile hi-fi setup had a reel-to-reel, so that you didn't have cassettes. Cassettes came later. So like what they would do is they put the reel-to-reel on, and then you sit there and you feed the tape through, and then you set your levels, and it's the same kind of thing. You would have, like, we had a receiver that had lots of switches on the front that would change the inputs and outputs. So I learned all that crap really, really early. And
Wow.
I don't know what to say. I mean, it is kind of like, wow, because a lot of people don't even know what a switch is today. I mean, I know lots of musicians that are, my age that still didn't have that kind of upbringing, like they didn't understand how to hook stuff up and still don't, they just like, some engineer comes over and hooks it up for them. And me, I'm out there making the cables. I'm soldering.
Yeah, since very young, it seems. And now
Yes,
you're
very
like
much
even like
so.
doing Pro Tool stuff, even digitally. Now you don't do that at all. Now it's just download an app, make an account, and that's
Yeah,
it.
the
You have
apps
every
are
song ever.
the plugins are real, man. I mean, I was talking to I was talking to a friend of mine who's he's clearing out a storage unit, and he's got all these 80s, 1980s, 1990s, 19-inch rack units like that have digital delays on them and compressors and all this. And the problem with that is that well, let's look. I'll say the horrible word. It's obsolete. The plugins are making it so that you don't even need anything like that in the studio anymore. And there's another really serious, important problem with that, and that is because you're in the digital domain and you've already converted your analog guitar stuff or drums or whatever into from analog. It's been processed, maybe going into the microphone, and then it gets processed into digital from analog, and it goes into the digital domain. And if you think you're going to put a delay on it that's in some rack unit, well, the problem then is that you have to convert it back to analog again, and then it goes into the rack and does its digital thing. It does its delay or reverb or whatever you want it to do. Then it comes back and has to be converted back from analog back to digital, and there's a
Wow.
time lapse. So you're having a latency problem by doing this DA conversion thing as many times as you are. So this is why it's so important to have plugins, because it's all part of the same computer and it's in the mainframe, and then you can actually utilize the processor in real time to process each piece as it's remaining in the digital domain, if you can follow all that. So it doesn't have to go out and get converted back and forth from digital to analog and all this crap. So the only time you can really use analog stuff like these 19-inch units that my friend's trying to sell and taking photos of and trying to put on the market, you can use it in live sound. I mean, you can use all sorts of really compressors are very useful for drums and gating drums and that kind of thing. And delays are still useful in live sound, unless you have a fully new, brand new digital unit where they have the plugins again, and then you're doomed. So like you need to find an old school mixing board that has lots of 1/4-inch jacks in the back, and you can run all your outboard gear and all your EQs and compressors and shit, and then it works. I mean, there's plenty of great sounding clubs and venues that have all analog stuff, and so it's not the end of the world, but you need to target your market. So my poor buddy is like suffering. He can't sell it that easily. I had a lot
Yeah.
of stuff too, but I have a lot less of it because I've been figuring out how to move it on, because it's time to move on with the obsolete shit.
Exactly. And it's crazy. Like I have a buddy who has a home studio, and it's just insane the power he has with that. Or like back in the day, how just like hard it like studio time, you
Oh,
had like 5 days to make a record. Now it's like
You
you have as
can,
long as you can, and I can't
well, it's,
imagine what it's going to look like in like 20 years.
I
You
mean,
know,
I think the biggest thing to remember, and please understand, let me say something really clear. There is no going back. I will never ever go back to tape. There's a million things that are wrong with tape. I'll point out a couple right now, but the idea of like what we had to go through back in the 80s when we had the 2-inch machines, 2-inch tape is like big, huge, massive
I've heard the
ribbons that are,
stories.
and you take them out and you pull these things out, and it's like, you got this shit all over the place. I mean, it's like, whoa, here, watch this. It's like, oh shit, there's tape everywhere, and then you put the tape out and you're laying it out and you're like, cutting it, and you've marked with your chalk. You're like, oh shit, I've got to mark it here. I got to run it back and listen to where it goes. Finding the snare hit, right? So you put the snare up loud in the mix. You turn around and you go, the snare is like up and it's soloed, and then you go back to your big, you're rotating the big. You're doing what they call rocking, and you're trying to find the snare hit, and it's like. Once you get it, you mark it. You get your pen out, you go like, you just go mark the position, and then you take it out and you got all your tape.
What a headache.
Oh my God. And then you cut it. Then you're cutting with a razor blade. So you get the razor blades out. Here's a razor blade. And you see, I'm serious. This is how you do it. And then you tape it back together again, and you've measured all the snare hits. You've counted them out because you're going to cut out a part that's like got 32 snare hits because of whatever you're shortening it, for example. Or it's part of the other piece of tape that's over on the wall that you've got taped there, and you bring it back and you tape it. Oh my God, this is real. And the engineers that were really good at this shit were super sought after. It's not like that anymore.
Not at
It's
all.
not like that anymore. This kind of insanity is over. You don't have to do this. And yet that's what they used to do. And now we just do it with Pro Tools. We run, we do vocals, for example, you run like, get 10 takes, and we have them set up in playlists. I'm sure you know how Pro Tools works, right?
Yeah.
And then you just run the playlists and you figure out which tracks you like, and you open up another track 11, and you start moving your good takes up and build the track up. And it's easy with vocals because there's always pauses, and you can pick out the best version. And to do that in the old days, how would you even do it? I guess you could do it. You would have to, oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. You'd have to like pull from various tracks, bounce them up to the top of the 2-inch. Fuck it.
I can't even imagine
insane.
that.
It's insane. It's insane off the charts. So it comes back down to one thing that's really important to never forget. You would have all these recordings. Like, look at all the greatest recordings of the world. You have your Queen, Bohemian Rhapsodies, you have Aerosmith Rocks, you have all the Hendrix stuff. You have, a lot of the Hendrix stuff was actually done on 8 tracks, which isn't that big. But Bohemian Rhapsody, that was 24 tracks, I believe. I think it was 24. Wow. I believe it's 24. Only 24. That's 2-inch. That's what everybody had. I mean, 2 inches is still 2 inches, and there's 24 tracks on 2 inches. You can couple them together and get 48 tracks too. That's when you use the time code, but whatever. Anyhow, so back to what I was saying. It's like when Roger Taylor would play all his parts, man, he was getting really excellent drum tracks and takes, and he would do his best to play as good as he could. And there were still mistakes. And therein lies what I'm saying. There's still mistakes. So when you have errors, it just turns into human feel. So this is why a lot of these classic records are as classic as they are. And you listen to stuff like brand new shit from so many that are, bands from today. I don't have to name any names because they all do it. Everybody cheats and they, do this whole playlist thing, and it sounds perfect. Yep. I mean, there's many bands I could point out, which I don't feel like pointing out the names of because everybody's guilty, including myself. But there's ways to clean stuff up and polish shit up to the point of where it's unbelievable. It doesn't even sound real anymore. And yes, it does happen. And yes, anything that does sound like too perfect to be real isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about really played instruments too, because you can move drum hits right around on the time code to the clicks, and you can look at milliseconds right down to the thousandth of a millisecond, and you could push and shove parts and pieces and get them dead on perfect. You lose all the feel that way, but you can still do it.
Yeah, yeah. Must be crazy, especially looking back at like the Anvil Chorus days, where it's like, wow.
Yes, the Anvil Chorus days. Well said. Yes,
where things are way different now in terms
I'm
of.
in the middle of the Anvil Chorus stuff right now. We
Oh
have all
yeah.
the ancient demos, and I'm digitizing all of them as we speak. I'm in the middle of it.
Wow.
Not here where I am today, because I'm doing business and doing some shit with the Porsche engines. Like this is a Porsche crankshaft.
So is this your garage here?
This is my shop here where I do a lot of the precision engine building.
Wow.
Here's some more stuff. This is going to become a 3-liter, but
That's awesome.
Yeah, right now I'm just kind of like chill and just I'm waiting for parts. So I don't have all the parts yet, but these are all polished, all beautiful, all ready to go. This is like
Looks
thousands
gorgeous.
of dollars of nightmare expensive Porsche shit. But you keep it all covered with the bag. But anyway, where I'm going with this is that this is where I am today. When I'm at home in the studio, right now I'm running all the 4-track tapes, which are tapes from back then, and I'm digitizing all the songs, which means taking all 4 tracks and running them into 4 inputs, converting them to digital, and then recording them into Pro Tools, and they sit there just simply played out. I mean, the way the tape comes out goes right in, and so like. Then once it's in, you can start working a little bit with the levels and fine-tuning some of the parts and EQing little bits and pieces that got screwed up with the tape over the years. Because please remember, a lot of these tapes are so old and they've been through so many temperature changes and there's been so much back and forth. I mean, they've been stable in terms of storage now for about 20 years, which is really good.
Wow.
But before that, it was crazy. We take them from studio to studio in a box with all the other tapes. There's plenty of other tapes too. Like I have, lots of Heathen stuff. I have lots of. I have the Exodus Turk Street demo tapes. I have stuff from Mordred, all sorts of other weird side projects and shit like that. It's all in that box.
Are you planning to digitize all of it?
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, there's certain things. There's more priority to doing than others. Like I don't need. I got to do the Exodus stuff really properly. I got to call up Gary and find out, what he thinks about it. I mean, I'm not looking to release this is not about a cash grab. It's about preserving the
archives,
stuff, more or less. I mean, I don't need to tell them that I'm or anybody that I'm preserving them into the digital domain. I mean, they belong to me, but on the other hand, it's not even about that. It's more about saving them so they don't get screwed up. Imagine if something went wrong and like there was a flood and all the real tapes got screwed up and they were gone forever. Then we'd be damned to whatever we have on cassettes. So
yeah, in this day and age, it is scary when something's only on physical media.
Yeah, I memean, archiving is an important thing. It's always has been. I mean, if you go back in time, I mean, a lot of the libraries, they archive stuff. There's microfiche. There's all sorts of shit that needs to be archived, and it doesn't necessarily. It's not good enough if you only put it on CD, for example.
Yeah.
So. I mean, with that said, it's not really good enough to have it on electronic mediums either. But then at some point it has to sit somewhere. So where is it going to sit? I mean, anything is better than, I mean, tapes are terrible. They fall apart, they split, they degrade in ways that are very, very physical and very terrible and final. I mean, once they're totally degraded, that's the end. You can't do anything anymore. You just have so many, I don't even want to talk about it. It's horrible. I've seen bad examples.
Yeah. What do you remember about those, like making those early Anvil Chorus demos?
Oh, just being excited and being in the moment and excited, young, crazy teenager, young 22-year-old maniac, trying to get down parts and trying to be as best as we could. And just all, pulling it all out. Everybody was excited to be recording, I mean, it was an important thing. Not everybody could
Yeah.
record like that back then, so it was important to bring your A game and come and play. I mean, it's like that with all the Mordred stuff, with with the old Exodus stuff. We had a great time doing that. It was crazy. Those guys are hilarious, and it's all in the tapes too. I can't let that out. It's too much.
Yeah, I'd kill to listen to so many of those. I hear stories about these demo tapes floating around. It's like, oh,
Yeah, well, the thing is like, I mean, as long as I'm still around, which I can't say that for everybody, unfortunately. Rest in peace. It's kind of part of what I got to do is archive this shit, not just continue to write and record new music for whatever band, but it's important to like take care of what already exists, and just kind of I mean, there's so many people out there that want the old stuff and they have problems being able to get it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, we just got back from doing this European run with the Blind Illusion thing, and it was really interesting to talk to the people out there. When I told them I was in the middle of digitizing a lot of this Anvil Chorus shit, they were completely blown away, and they just got out of it. And so, like, I've been getting messages about it, and once it's all ready, I'm gonna set up. I'm gonna modify one of the websites and put availability or information of where to get it. And I mean, because the people want it. It's like, why would anybody want to deny that? It's important. It's not about making money. It's more about, I mean, sure, there's costs that go into like producing physical CDs and all that, and obviously you have to make a little bit of it back, but no one's looking to make $1 million off any of this stuff.
exactly, man. And like, same on my end. Like, I'm not making money from this, but it's
Labor of
cool, and it's
love.
like, yeah, exactly. And like these interviews are almost like mini archival things, like artists talking about the band and stories. A lot of us have never heard, so it is cool. It is cool. You
Yeah, I
know.
mean, it's madness because, I mean, not only is it like it's before your time personally, it's before my son's time, my daughter's time, but it's before the times of so many people that some of the guys I even look to, they're younger than me, but they're still doing relevant shit, and it's important to like keep all that alive. I mean, this is what makes a music scene as relevant and good as it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
man, 100%. And
yeah.
it's and I love digging through like archives and stuff. I found it funny. Anvil Chorus used to be called like Viking, right?
Yeah, a million years even before that, there was the very first version of Anvil Chorus that was called Viking. Yeah, the band had existed before I joined. And what's really
Oh,
hilarious is I think I had the banner somewhere. It was somebody painted it, and I have it over here. It's actually close by me, and it's like stapled to the ceiling and underneath the stairs. But it just exists there. It's there. It is, and that's yes, it's true.
how long were they around until you joined?
Oh God, I don't know,
A few
6 months,
months? Yeah.
6 months maybe.
How
I
did
mean,
you
and
get
then
involved?
I knew the guitar player from school, and they were looking to get another guitar player, and I wanted to play. So we got exchanged telephone numbers. There wasn't any Instagrams or anything like that.
No
But
DMs.
it was all about, yeah, exactly. And it was just you called people up and go down and sit down in the same room and go over parts, make sure everything's cool and played well and right and correct.
Yeah, and
I
then
don't.
you jumped into Control after.
That was after Anvil Chorus was
Yeah.
going for years. The Control thing came after Anvil Chorus. There was yeah, the band was sort of confused how it wanted to continue with itself. Some of the guys wanted to get more into like new romantic kinds of music and new wave shit, and that's fine, and that's cool, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I mean, I'd already seen enough heavy rock, and then Metallica came on the scene, and I wanted to play heavier stuff. So I was already like way into Van Halen and way into like whatever was heavier, the new wave of British heavy metal stuff came out. There was Angel Witch, Iron Maiden available to listen to, and
Diamond Head.
I wanted to listen at harder and get more into bands like that. And so, but I had a lot of pent up frustration, and the Control thing was a lot more punk rock, but it was great to like release stuff. But the stuff I was writing for them was all way more progressive metal kind of stuff. And so we wound up using a lot of those songs in Control for the Heathen thing, which came right afterwards.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so like Death by Hanging, that became a Heathen song. Feed the Children, that was another Control song that turned into a that was a fun song to write and come up with. But we played that in Heathen. I still have it available. It was never actually released with Heathen, but it's a great song. I mean, it'd be cool
Yeah,
to do
that's
it at some point,
awesome.
you know.
It's
And
cool to hear.
God, what else was available? I don't know. So I came up with the Goblin's Blade song when I was out doing live sound with Exodus on their Bonded by Blood tour, and wrote a lot of that. As crazily and strangely enough, on the roof of some building in Manhattan. On it was just weird. It came to me. I don't know. That
Yeah.
became that song, and that's kind of a popular song with Heathen still. So they still have to play it. And I wrote it, so who gives a
Yeah,
shit?
they play
You
it
know?
every time.
Yeah, they
Uh,
have to.
they
They
have
have
to.
to. Everybody wants to hear it. What can I say? You know, write your own stuff. Write more shit. And I don't use my stuff, but no, they
Well,
have to. We use whatever works. Sorry if it works.
yeah, you were pretty involved in that band. Like you were involved in like the recruiting process as well,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah. At that time, I mean, there was Carl Sacco was he kept calling me to try to get involved with playing guitar, and you know, he would say, "Ah, well, Lee's is at home in bed. He won't get up and get out of bed." So, but I saw them play one show, and I started calling Lee up. I said, "Hey, you know, you should get out of bed. We should like do something." And so eventually he did, and then we started writing stuff, and it's became what we used on the first record. You know, so like it was okay. I mean, he got up out of bed. Now he plays in his favorite band, Exodus. That was always his favorite band, and it's all fine. Everybody should do what they really want to do. You know.
It's a good band to be in.
Yeah. I mean, I never wanted to be in Exodus, so it's okay. But it's just
Fair
I'd
enough.
rather do my own thing. I always wanted to be kind of my own guy and be original if possible. You know, and don't always. I mean, you can have influences, but I don't want to be like that guy or join that band because you know that's all I know how to do. But
Yeah, man,
that's cool.
just talking to it, you seem happy just doing your own thing, with the cars, with Blind Illusion.
Yeah. I mean, Mark and I go way back, so it you know when he was. I mean, Mark's completely insane, but that's another subject completely. But he's also an excellent player. And so when the opportunity came about to play with him, you know, I couldn't just like, you know, let him go off to Europe and flail around with no second guitar player. And, you know, I mean, there was an opportunity in 2017 to go off and play some, uh, uh some shows in Europe, a festival and a bunch of other shows they had lined up but they didn't really have a band. So I went out and helped out Mark, and it's great to it's good to like go in and help people out, and people you've known for forever that are also from our Bay Area scene, and be able to like hold the flag of metal high for our Bay Area scene, and let things be appropriately presented and work towards doing the best possible presentation.
Yeah, man.
So that,
Totally. How do you recall your relationship with the Bay Area scene? Like, what do you remember about those days?
um
Chaotic, from what I've heard.
well, there was a lot of madness when we started doing the Anvil Chorus thing. All we really had was Y&T. Yesterday and Today, they were a big local band, and Y&T became, they did Black Tiger and all that, and it became somewhat more commercial later. We had them. We had the Greg Kinn band, which is a little bit more poppy kind of a band, and we had the touring acts that would come through a place called the Old Waldorf, and so we would play there and sometimes and support these bands. And then there was, then kind of like, let's see, then Ranger was involved, who became Night Ranger. But there was a bunch of fledgling rock bands that were influenced by the heavy metal scenes in Europe, and Anvil Chorus is one of them. And we wanted to like listen to more Maiden and Samson, all the stuff from metal from others, Scorpions, all the old stuff with Uli Roth. And Van Halen was kind of a big deal too, and so we were kind of like mixing it up with these kind of influences and writing songs kind of sort of like what we were listening to, and that's what we were listening to. And then Metallica came in, and Exodus was around too, and we started playing these Metal Monday shows, and I realized, holy shit, there's a bunch of guys from the East Bay that are playing heavy stuff too, and so we started playing together, and that's how I met those guys. And that's how I met Blind Illusion too, because they're from the same area up in Northeast Bay, Albany, in the in El Cerrito, San Pablo area, and El Sobrante. That's all that part of, So like we were from San Francisco, but we knew people from the East Bay, and we knew like Laws Rocket. They were from Berkeley, so it was fun to start letting it become a Bay Area thing, And we started playing shows together, and that's how I met Mark from Blind Illusion, and that's how I met Gary from, and Kirk Hammett and those guys.
Wow.
We used to have big parties at Kirk's mom's house out in El Sobrante, and barbecue parties, lots of ladies. It was fun.
That's awesome, man. Now, going back to Heathen, Breaking the Silence is just such a classic. And over the years, it's really proven how timeless of a record that is. What do you remember about the writing and recording process of that album?
Well, the whole Control thing fell apart because the singer went off to law school, which was amazing. He's great. But,
It happens.
Yeah. And so I started, like I said, I got Lee out of bed and we started writing songs. And a lot of them sound kind of like, there's lots of Exodus influences and old Metallica influences. I mean, because that's what we're listening to, And I brought some of the songs, like the Goblins Blade song, and then I wrote the chorus for Breaking the Silence and whatever. There's a bunch of stuff. We both we co-wrote a lot of the stuff, and we wanted to get Lee wanted to get Paul Bailoff because he wanted to be the next Exodus. So, and I was like saying, I don't know, we should probably get somebody melodic so we kind of have a chance to try to be a little bit more commercial, maybe go the direction of like Anthrax or something like that, So like in the end, we wound up getting Dave anyway, and Dave is a super melodic kind of singer, and so that's the way that all went down. So we were writing those kind of heavier kinds of songs, and that's why Dave's vocals sound the way they do, is because we just got him in the band, and it was kind of a tough call for Lee. He really wanted to have Paul. He wanted to be, he wanted to get somebody who sounded exactly like Paul Bailoff. And I was just like, I don't know, forget it. We already got Exodus. Why do we want to make another one? I don't like copying, I'd rather like be original. So that's sort of how that all went. And so I was happy that the band became, with the addition of Dave, kind of what I was hoping it would become. And that was a lot more original. And I don't know, we decided we would put the Set Me Free song on it because it seemed like MTV was starting to happen. And so we figured that would be an interesting way to to work with an existing song that was commercially like kind of sing-songy, it's like a commercial kind of song, but we could put our stamp on it with the heavy guitars, and Dave's voice fit into the whole concept of how to sing it, and I threw down a crazy solo on it. It turned into a great song. People really, they still like it, they still want to hear it. The thing's been played, I don't even know how many times on whatever it is on YouTube. It's like a lot.
I can confirm it's a lot.
I'm not the guy that watches numbers. I don't care. It's just I care that people like stuff. That's important, and that things are successful. It's not about bragging about numbers or how many hits or likes. That's never been a big deal. I mean, it is to some people, like people that are promoting tours, they want to see likes. But for me, it's way more interesting to like look at the integrity of what you're actually doing and making sure that you can feel like like it stands the test of time. So if you say, and I've heard this from other people, that those records have held up really well, and then we've done our job. That's what should be done. It's not about keep up with the Joneses and write the next Metallica record for them, you know, because that would be that's not what you do. You got to be original. You got to try to work on your own thing and put your own stamp on it that somebody can say, "Whoa, cool, that's that guy," because I recognize that style. You know, that's all I'm saying.
I couldn't agree more, man. And I wish more bands had that same belief. I
Yeah,
really do.
it was funny. I see the same problem in bands, but I'll tell you a crazy little side note. I was out at a race about 10 years ago. It was one of those IndyCar races. And, we had the Haas racing and, Newman Haas, and they're supposed to be front runners, and everybody got their cars and everybody's got their toolboxes, and the toolboxes are the same color, and they're actually angled and parked the same way, and because everybody's looking at everybody else, and they all have the same shades on, and they're looking at each other and making sure that everything's okay and everybody looks exactly the same. And I started shaking my head. I was thinking, wow, where have I seen this before? Yeah. And it's like, why in the hell can't you just break free and just do your own thing and fucking win,
Be an individual, you know?
you own it and fucking make it happen and be better and different than everyone else, and have something that is like, I mean, look at Gojira, that band is so unique and so different, and they don't sound like Metallica. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
lots of bands that, I mean, look at Metallica. They sound like Metallica. That's great. Thanks. They did it, there's great bands that sound only like them, and that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Well, very well said. I want to bring it back to Breaking the Silence. You got signed to Combat for that,
Yeah,
right? Did they
that
give
was
you
a
like a
Combat.
good budget or like good studio time for that record?
Yeah, it was yes, yes, and yes. We got plenty of money to record it. And more importantly, we pushed really hard to get a good video budget out of it, which we got, which was also cool. I mean, that was a pretty cool deal, because that getting the video recorded the way, or we did the video and the record came out pretty much like, okay. So if you, depending on who you ask in the Heathen band, like if you ask Lee, for example, he hates the production completely. But it could be better. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, that's what we had at the time, and that's the way it worked out. And at this point where we are, I can just look back and say, wow, well, it could have been better, but that's what we got. And has it stood the test of time? Yeah, it has. Wow, well, that's cool. Should we re-record it? No, not really. I mean, there's been discussion about re-recording it, which I find kind of insane because it's sort of like done already. Dave doesn't sound quite as high as he did back then, and it's like, why in the hell would you even want to mess with it? It's sort of like that's the original band. I mean, it's sort of like that's what we got, and I wish it was heavier. I mean, I'm sure we could have done 18,000 things better, but hindsight is always 2020. What about when you're doing it? The time to change it is right when you're doing it. So were we completely happy with it? Not totally, but was it a train wreck? No, hell no. So I accept it and move on. I don't care. I'd much rather move on. You leave the timestamp and you keep going. And so that's what we did with the second record, and we moved up, got a bunch of different amps, and went for a different kind of production style, which was pretty much like And Justice for All, but it was I mean, a little bit too close for my comfort, but
I don't know.
No bass.
I feel like it is like a lightning in the bottle situation because like your influences were going through you. It was like just a perfect like, and you see bands like I don't want to call anyone out, but like bands will redo their 80s record and they're playing slower. The notes aren't as high as they're hitting. It's like, what's the point? You're talking about production. I can see maybe remastering a record.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, remixing isn't really a serious problem to consider either, because sometimes mixes can be sweetened up and made even more intense that you can't do with mastering. Mastering is just, it's an after. I mean, you take the mixed product and you master it with slight EQ fluctuations, and that's how and levels. And there's some really interesting things you can do with mastering. There's no question about it. But if you really want to get in there, you want to remix it. And
Yeah.
but you don't want to re-record it. I mean, that's like where it starts becoming like that's where you're right on the thin ice, because then it's not official anymore. It's not. It's like, wow, what the hell did they do? Kind of a thing.
Yeah, and people don't realize a guitar tone adds so much, I feel. And a lot of these re-recorded ones, it's all the same tone. And I feel like a lot of the 80s stuff is like everything's so unique and all the instruments really have their own sound.
Yeah, there was a lot of that because not a lot of people knew how to do it. I mean, there's a standard guitar trick of like using a Shure SM57 mic on the cabinet. That's like what Van Halen did, for example. He mic'd a 1960 cabinet with, I forget what kind of speakers, but I think it was like, I mean, whatever it is, it wasn't like exotic microphones. Like people started using 421s later. And that's kind of my standard procedure now, is to use those two microphones. But once you get those, then it goes into preamps and you start messing around with the tone, sweetening it a little bit before it goes into the digital shit. But back then, we didn't even know. So like we would like just like we go out and we'd work with the mic position and try to figure out which cabinets we liked. And we'd still kind of become, it wasn't like we weren't really sure. And so like that's why there's a lot of variations in tone. Same thing with the amps. Like people
Yeah.
weren't really sure. There was the LA kind of approach was to use a lot of mid-range in the amplifiers, and then you get these guys modifying the Marshalls so the mid-range circuit in the preamp would be modified so it provided more mid-range and big spikes here and there, and switches you can turn on and off. And people were really experimenting and chasing tone, which is a great thing. Now it's like, well, I want to be metal. Okay, cool. Well, I'll just like go out and get the latest 5150 amp. And like, if you look, everybody's got the same fucking amp. So it's like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, and they have the same speakers. Like, oh, vintage 30s, and that's what you got to use, and that's what's heavy. And then again, it goes back to that IndyCar race thing where everybody's like copying the position of the fucking toolbox, and it's like, really? Why don't you like just like break something completely new out? I mean,
A lot of designer gear, a lot of designer stuff.
I have this goofy amp. My friend kept telling me, I have a friend of mine who sells me gear, Woody. And Woody was telling me, man, I met this guy from Italy. He's got this really interesting amp. You really need one. And I'm like, oh, yeah, right. I mean, I'm pretty happy with my PV Triple X's. It's pretty killer. I like it. I mean, PV Triple X is a really easy to use go-to amp. Sounds great every time. I use it for solos. I use it for rhythm sometimes. It depends. But it's been it's like, you get meat and potatoes. That's like pretty much slam dunk. Blows away the Marshall JCM 800 for most stuff, especially heavy stuff. But anyway, so Woody keeps going. He goes, you got to get rid of that PV. You got to use this Italian amp. And I'm like going, what the fuck are you talking about? He goes, yeah, this amp's it's a Mezza Barba. It's the guy's Pierangelo Mezzobarba. He's from Italy. You got to use this amp. You need this amp. And I'm like going, really? And so me and him, Woody and I were down at NAMM, and we went up to the booth, and he goes, yeah, hey, man, let's go check out let's go check this amp out. Here's the Mezzobarba amp. And I plugged into it, and it sounds pretty good, and it sounds interesting, and it's got lots of gain, and it's got lots of tone. And I'm thinking, wow, this is actually pretty cool. I could probably make this work. And Woody's like going, you got to have this amp. We'll work a deal. We'll get this amp. So next thing, long story short, I wind up getting the amp. And I take this amp back. And it's like this super hot woman from Italy. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this fucking thing? Well, I started playing around with it. And it took me a little while. It was really finicky. But I started dicking around with the tone setups and trying to figure out how to run the onboard gear into it and trying to figure out how to make it sound really heavy and killer. Then I discovered that I can use these kind of speakers and stuff. And it sweetened the tone up a little more. Anyway, long story short, nobody uses those amps except me. I mean, blues guys do. No question about it. But in the heavy metal world, no one's ever done anything like that. and they use angles and these 5150s, and it's important. I guess the point is, it's important to think outside the box and try something new. Try something new. The latest greatest thing they're doing is they're using these modelers called, and the hot one right now is not the Kemper or the Axe Effects, but the neural quad cortex. These are like really small, and they model all sorts of amps. And inside the actual standard program, there's like 15 amps in there that sound exactly like the amps I just described, except the Mesa Barba. But that's easy enough to solve. You just go blatantly, you capture it. You capture the tone and it models it. That's how these things work.
Wow. Yeah.
It's very, very different from what it used to be. I'm very old school about using an old 2203 Marshall JCM 800. No question about it. It's the greatest rock tone ever for anything AC/DC or even remotely sounding like it. Listen to Airborne. They're awesome, But when it comes down to cutting edge metal, it's important to listen to different other stuff. I mean, I kind of like how Gary Holt went back to using the 2055. It's the new reissue Jubilees. And he gets a great tone. It's mostly in his hands. Gary could play into a Fender and it would sound like that, But I like how he just doesn't want to do what everybody else does. I mean, it's important to be that way, and your uniqueness and your originality will follow you as long as you have that attitude. The last thing you want to do is look at what everybody else is using and copying. It's like, oh, I see that thing, I want that. Or, whoa, he's got this thing, I need that. Fuck this.
Yeah.
Break walls. I hate this.
It's all designer stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, it's simpler than that. It's more like copying, Everybody got those the Mesa Boogie, whatever the hell those things are, the rectifiers, I don't
Yeah.
The only Mesa Boogie I really like is the Mark III, the one we used for the second Heathen record. And that's a good one. It's noisy and crazy, and it's like a one-trick pony, but it sounds fucking badass, And that's it. That's all you need. I don't have one, but I'd love to get one,
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that it's a way of looking at it. A lot of people probably won't agree with me, but I don't really care. It's how I move forward.
A lot of it's taste, I feel, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I wouldn't mind having any of these amps we were describing. It's like you look at George Lynch. He's got an amp wall with so many amps, and it's pretty impressive because, when he's recording the party, he'd say, well, let's see, what are we going to use today? We're going to use this one. Okay. And then he's got a switching matrix down here.
That's so insane.
It's awesome, too. I mean, I have a bunch of amps, but I don't have as many as I need. I mean, who really needs 20 amps, I mean,
all on a wall, right?
It comes down to the fingers. If you don't have it in here and you don't know how to play, it doesn't matter what amp you got, I mean, these are like, like you might like these pliers, or you might want to use these pliers. But who cares? I mean, I just have tools out because I'm working on shit.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? It's
yeah, man, totally. And like, we're talking about like being an individual and stuff. And it's so cool because you can look at your stuff in the 80s and now from like just last year, how much do you feel your creative process has like really evolved?
It's evolved for sure. No question about it. I mean, I still have like this standard procedure where, like, say if I come in a room and you're in the room, you're showing me a song you wrote, right? And I have to play it and I figure out how to play it with the band because we got this killer drummer here and we got you and the bass player and everybody knows songs except me. So I'm going to say to you, hey, look, I need to know all the rhythm parts. Just show me every single thing that goes on with the rhythms. So I'll sit there and I'll figure out how to play the rhythm parts perfectly. And he'll say, yeah, well, here's a solo. And I'm no solo yet. Let's figure this out. And, yeah, but there's a harmony thing with them. No. Got to have the foundation down. So I'll play the whole song, figure out how to play it frontwards and backwards on rhythms, get the picking right, get everything super tight, right? And it's got to sync nicely and perfectly, you know. And if there's any syncopation, it's got to be right, you know. And then once that's all done, then I say, now let's. What about in the chorus? We're doing these. What's with this harmony thing? And so, oh yeah, well, so these such and such notes, 6 notes or something, you know. And then we get those down, and then that's all killer. So we play in the rhythm parts, you go to the chorus, and then you get the harmonies down, and that's like, oh yeah, here's the solo part. You know, here, just play a solo. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll play something, you know, and finish it, and then go back, and then we'll practice it that way. So basically, it's like learn the rhythm parts, learn, you know, how the song goes, structure, and then you figure out the melodies and harmonies, and then throw the solos on. Nothing's changed with that, but that's just been more solidified than ever. The other thing that's critical that has changed is once we started doing, starting with the Wrath of the Gods record, something changed that's really critical, and it has to do with click maps. So if you come up with a song and you have, so like, because Pro Tools exists and you can program and write the entire tempo out, the tempo map becomes the click map, becomes what you're actually playing. So like if you come up with a part, like say, you know, the main part of the song, the intro, then you have the main part, and then you have the chorus, and then you have the breakdown, and then it goes back to the main part and the chorus and the breakdown, and then there's like the bridge, and then it gets to the heavy part, and then it gets to the first solo, then it goes into the harmonies, then it goes to the second solo, and it's a different guy, right? And then it's like all this may or may not change the tempo, but the click map remains. And the click is there, and it gets programmed if there's a tempo change or not. And then you record the guitar as playing the rhythm part only, not necessarily even a melody, or definitely not a solo, because it's just about setting the map up for the song so that you can write the click map. Once it's recorded with the first guitar, keep it simple. One guitar is pretty much all you need. If you really want to, you can do 2. But we're talking about rhythms. We're not talking about solos, unless it's going to be maybe to show where the second solo is, because there's going to be a special drum fill right before it or right after it, some kind of a pointer maybe. Then you record it and it's done, and then you have your click map. That's the actual skeleton of the song. Then you go out to the drums, you set the drums all up, set all mics up, get everything done, and you play everything back through the headphones. The guy plays the guitars with the click map, and it's perfectly synced, perfectly timed. You're playing the click, and he's got his cans on, and he's rocking, and he does the whole thing. We did the whole record that way. And
wow,
there's no going back.
Yeah.
Because it's not sitting out in the same room, making noise, having the lead from the guitars go into the drum mics, and nothing like that at all. It's all about pure, simple, isolated stuff. And it just works great because basically the click map's got all the rhythm guitars so the drums can follow, and you play to the single track all the way through, and you have the click, and it's up loud. You can set it up so it's got light flashing on it if you want. But most importantly, you have a guide guitar and the click, and that's it, and that's all. And once you record like that, you'll never go back. It's sick.
Yeah, it must have been so nice making Wrath of the Gods, especially looking back at like your past projects, like having studio time, you know, being in a crunch, a time slot. Now it's like, you know, I'll just do it at my own pace. It must be just so nice.
Yeah,
Looking
well,
back.
because we own the studios. I mean, Tom has his studio and I have mine. You know, anytime, and when we were developing them, we had Damian Rasmussen come in and engineer the stuff and figure out, you know, details. So like, well, you want to set this line chain up, got to get the signal chain here using this and such and such. And then, you know, he go out and throw his 2 cents at the mic placement on the drums, for example. And once we're ready to go, then he takes off. We just start recording, you know. And we did the drums in 4 different sessions on that Wrath of the Gods record. Unfortunately, it changed the way that they sound, but you know, that's what happens when you don't do it all at the same time. When you take the drums down, it's going to sound different. So whatever. So we just ran with it and just like, that's cool. Well, every song sounds a little bit, has its own style. So it's kind of all right too. I mean, not everything has to be like everybody else. Not everybody has to have the exact same sound. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much the rhythm tones were the same. I mean, I was using the Mezzabarba for for all of the heavy rhythm tones, it was all brutal mezzobar, but through two cabinets, different cabinets with different mics, but still simple with preamps and a little bit of processing and so on. And it turned out the way it did. And it was actually, as complicated as it may sound, it wasn't. It was just like once it's done, you don't fuck with the mics anymore. You just sit there and you just play your parts, play them back. You know, you may have to fix an edit or do something little here and there, and then you double it and whatever. That's the guitar parts. But the drums, you know, we do the same thing with the playlist. We'd do like 5 takes and we'd edit them together a little bit. Like sometimes the end part was better than, you know, there's a big hole in the break. And so you can just stub in the second part and put them together that way. And these tricks are what everybody does today. I mean, if somebody says they don't, they're lying, you know, it's the way But you know, with that said, you still want to keep it honest and try not to do things like, you know, do what the techno guys do and just, you know, run everything to a SMPTE time code click and everything's MIDI'd off of that, so everything's perfect. No, we have mistakes all over the place. I mean, there's slop everywhere. You know, really bad ones you can push and shove and move the parts around, but you know, it's easier to re-record it. You know, like, fix the goddamn part. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's only 2 bars. Do it. Play it. Shut up.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I produce shit. It's like you look at how much time it takes to play games or just to re-record it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a big deal. And then you can fix parts. Sometimes shit gets developed on the fly, too. Sometimes you'll be in the middle of it and you'll say, whoa, you know what? This click maps, we're too short here. We need to double that. And there's ways that you can do that. Sometimes you have to re-record it, but there are ways to extend it. Things like that. I mean, these have not, this is brand new. This is like, for me, this is the most extensive that I got into the, you know, the heavy tricks. And yet they're not really new. This has been going around for quite a while. But what I like is my Pro Tools that I have at home. Tom's he just got a subscription Pro Tools, but his works perfectly with mine, which is somewhat older. And I don't use all the heavy stuff that you need. That all the newest versions are set up to do. Oh, it's very, very complicated, extreme amounts of tracking that are best suited for films and, you know, large scale productions where you don't want to change the EQs on any of the earlier tracks. Like, you know, tracks 32 to 48 might be specifically utilizing, you know, there's special outdoor sounds that you don't want to fuck with on the movie. And then tracks, you know, 48 to 64 are going to be specifically for the interior sounds that you're using, you know, as the car drives in and all this other shit. And then you're not going to want to mess with any of it. You're just going to keep adding. So they're up to like 128 now. And there's all sorts of ways you can even extend that range if you wanted to. But this has nothing to do with recording. I mean, we still, to this day, do not use more than, I mean, I don't know, what did we use? Some of the songs we did use a lot of tracks only because we could, but we could have easily got away with 24 to 32 easy. I think some of the tracks have up to 48. Like, I think the Wrath of the Gods had a very complicated beginning, and we used a lot of, because we were doing multiple mics and multiple takes of it build. It's a big, huge layering procedure with that whole intro. And that was, we moved that down, and that's like, that took up to 48 tracks or something like that. It was like, you know, an extra 12 because of the microphones involved. And because, you know, I mean, there are complexities to it, but there's no way that you need anything. I mean, it's just that it's easier to use them. It's not like, you know, you're limited to 24 because of the 2-inch tape.
Yeah.
It's easier to say, oh, add new track. Add how many? Oh, 6. Okay, cool. But the Pro Tools version has to be able to handle it. I mean, you can't just go to 72 if it's a really ancient version of Pro Tools. They limit you, and then the processing power is limited too. So you need to really watch how much processing power you use and so on. I mean, it's all pretty logical, really. But
yeah, I mean, and it turned out to be such an amazing record. It's really awesome, your involvement with Blind Illusion. How did you first get what was that call like, being recruited for Blind Illusion? How did you join the band?
Well, Mark was crazy. So the call went like this. It's like, oh, hi, Mark. Are you still insane? And he goes, of course, I'll always be insane. It's like, I don't remember how,
The
but it
rest
was
is
sort of like,
history.
I mean, there was some Harold O. He got me back into the band. Mark had some pretty hard years where he kind of disappeared off. He was like going through some serious personal times. But Harold O., our famous photographer maniac from the Bay Area, he was playing bass with him. When he wasn't doing DRI, and he said started calling me up and started saying, "Hey, you should really come down and jam with Mark. You guys would be really good together." And he kept doing this, and I was listening. And he would send me videos, and there was this video that of the song that they did called "Race with the Wizard," and I really like that one because there's lots of. I mean, there's this big middle section that goes between E and F, which is great to play harmonic minor over. So like Mark and I would go crazy playing harmonic minor and Phrygian scales in the key of E, and or he has other ways to explain it because he's pretty good at music, whereas I just listen. But
Nothing
yeah,
wrong with that,
and
man.
yeah. So I went down I guested with them at a show, and it was a lot of fun. And then next thing I know is Mark says, he calls me up, and I'm at work somewhere and dealing with some Porsche thing. And he goes, "Yeah, we're going to Europe. We really wanted to see if you could come with us and help us play. Play the set we're going to do such and such." And I thought about it. I go, "Damn, I can't leave him alone. He's going to need help." So I said, "Sure, let's do it." So that was a short one. It was kind of crazy, but it wasn't. It was just because the band was pretty new. And but yeah, we did it, and it was pretty awesome. We played this Headbangers open air festival, and Mark went crazy and started doing his kung fu shit, and it's always hilarious and insane. And the crowds over there in Europe never have seen anything like that, so it was really a big deal, and they really liked it. And we got called back to do more festivals after that, and one thing leads to another, and then we did an EP, and then the pandemic hit, and we said, well, it's time to do a record. If we're going to do a record, now's the time. Now we have time. Let's see what we got. What do you guys got for songs? Tom, you got anything? Mark, what do we got? And I already had some songs I'd worked on with Mark, and we just pulled them all together and got the song design right. And suddenly we had enough for the whole record, and so we just did it. And we did it with click tracks too at first, and then we got Andy involved, and Andy wanted to come play the record, so we did exactly like I said. Gave him click tracks, the click maps of the songs, and he went in and just killed it. And just he likes to record like that too. I mean, this isn't new. This is, for me, it's new because of the extent that we took it with the the idea of changing tempos like that. We used to do it long ago on tape with the SMPTE time code clicks, but that would take a whole track, and then after a while we'd have to record over it because we needed the track for something else.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a little nutshell of what went down with the whole Blind Illusion project with the Wrath of the God stuff. I mean, there's obviously details of how we did certain songs, but that's kind of in a nutshell how it went.
Yeah, what's the future look like for Blind Illusion?
Right now, after we finished, we're kind of in a little bit of a hiatus right now because it was just really stressful doing this European thing. There was some stupid shit that went down that we're just kind of taking a break from each other. So there's new songs. I think what's going to happen is Tom and I are going to get together and do more maps, and we'll figure out exactly how to proceed once those maps are done, and how we want to go ahead with all of it, and how it wants to be presented. We just released the latest video it was the last video song from Wrath of the Gods, and that's out right now, and it's kind of hilarious, and it's all tongue-in-cheek craziness.
Yeah.
Being on a spaceship and getting thrown out of the airlock. So we're just kind of doing that and chilling out. We're just working on writing up the rest of the stuff and seeing where we're going to go. And then Tom and I are going to get together and start doing maps pretty soon and see where that goes. It's like I said, I'm in the middle of doing this Anvil Chorus stuff, and digitizing all the old recordings, which are not only Anvil Chorus, So I'm looking forward to having more time to do exactly that. But after this Hawaii thing, I gotta get back to work. So
welcome back. What's the best way for people to stay updated with everything you do?
the website, go to the website. There's blindlucian.com. Pretty simple.
There we
It's
go.
all the information's there, all the swag is there, shirts, CDs, t-shirts, we got all sizes. We got tons of CDs and records, vinyl, all sorts of crap. It's all there available. And it'd be great if everybody buys everything all the time, then we can go to Hawaii again,
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
Bring all our friends this time.
I might have to check out the shop now. Very, very cool. This has been awesome, Doug. Thank you so much for doing this, man.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. It's important to kind of share what goes on with a lot of the madness. There's I got a lot of experience with it now. Jesus. I mean, all these years of like doing live sound and recording and playing with all these different wonderful bands. It's been quite a ride. And
Quite a ride. Yeah, man.
it's
Wow.
all these great musicians. It's been a lot, and hats off to all the great guys that we've all played with. And fuck, I don't know what else to say. Thank you
And it's
very
not
much.
over.
No, I'm not dead yet. So
Yeah. Well, to that, I'm Brandon Battick, and this is Disturbing the Priest.
okay, killer.